Welcome to the December school board meeting. First thing up is the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this is our reorganization meeting. So by definition, we have to appoint or vote on a new president, vice president, and then reconfirm all of our committees, et cetera. So I'm turning this over to temporary president for this evening will be Mrs. Armstrong to facilitate the election of president.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. So all I'm doing is calling to see, my understanding is we have two nominations right now. We have Mr. Barrett to remain as president and Mrs. Burrell to remain as vice president. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Seeing none, I would like to make a motion to approve the slate of Mr. Barrett as president and Mrs. Burrell as vice president. Do I have yeah,
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Oh, any discussion, sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. And I will pass this meeting back on to Mr. Barrett.
Best job you ever had.
Well done. And thank you again. The honor of serving all of you, I think. All right. So do we have to vote on these or just appoint the school authority? And is that that's a vote, that's what I thought. Okay, so Carol said she'd be interested in continuing on as the school authority representative if nobody else is interested. This is a 5-year appointment. That doesn't mean that you couldn't resign at some point if you chose not to fulfill your 5 years, but it is a 5-year appointment to the position. So is anybody else interested in it that's on the board? No one?
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
I think she did a phenomenal job when she was on the board and when she stepped off the board as well. So I would love to see her continue in the role. I would like to make a motion. Carol Pamascio to be appointed to the Chester County School Authority.
Second.
All right, discussion. So I agree. Carol's enjoyed doing it, and she misses not being on the board, so she's happy doing this, and she's enthusiastic about doing it. So any other comments or questions? All right. All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Chester County IU representative, Ellen, you still interested in?
I'll remain, yes.
All right, do we vote on this, or is this?
Motion to approve Mrs. Burrell as the IU representative.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
And I'm looking at it. These are for 2 or 3 year terms? Is that
1
correct?
year.
1 year? It's
3 year?
3 years.
I thought it was 3 years according to the sheet. Like 7/119 to 6/30/22 for some people.
Right, but we're just voting for the 1 year, right? Or are you
No, it's
voting for
3-year
the whole
election.
term? Okay,
3-year
gotcha.
I just
election.
want to make sure you know what you're getting
Just
into.
want to make sure I know what I'm getting into. Thank you.
But this, I mean,
Can be.
not that I'm not expecting you to rerun or anything, I'm not trying to imply anything, but this one's not like the school authority, right? This has to be a school board member, so it's 3 years unless you resign or you're not elected again for Great Valley School Board. So the school authority is a 5-year position that regardless if you're on the school board
And
or not.
the analogous description that I heard was that the Chester County School Authority, which is what we just appointed Carol to, is more like a facilities committee type thing, whereas the Chester County Intermediate Unit, which you would be on if appointed, is more like the school board here. So just for all of us who may not have had the pleasure of serving on the board.
Yes, the school authority, all they do is the facilities work, whereas the school board member that takes that board seat will manage all 3 sections of the budget. So it's much different.
Will you loop in with Carol if you were elected? just to kind of, so that you know what she's doing and she knows a little what you're doing?
The way it works, Steph, is the work that they do comes to our full board, not by each individual board member, but more or less in its totality. So we're always overseeing what they're doing, and we get that trickle down. I will tell you that since there's some changes with that property behind Cat Pickering, Carol will have a lot less work to do than she would have had prior. And Carol's great. She's really got a feel for it, so she's the best one.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Ellen Burrell to the CCIU. Oh, we did, right? Did we second? You done? Oh, sorry.
Well, I guess you got two motions.
One for you.
All right. Yeah. Twice the
Many
pay.
as you want.
Twice the pay. All right, all those in favor? It's all yours, 8-0. Thank you. All right, and then as far as committees that we've had in the past, I would assume, or I'd like to just keep them the way they are unless somebody wants to change something up on the committees. They're all in facilities or technology and finance as a whole. What am I missing? Oh, policy, oh, yeah, the all-important policy, yes. Yeah, we're not changing that one.
Facilities, finance, instruction.
And legislative, yes.
And legislative, we're going to have new legislator.
Yeah.
So legislative, I really think, is going to be bolstering up.
Oh, and we suggested the other day in executive, we were talking about trying to get a meeting with our new state representative sometime,
Set that
whenever
up
she
with
can.
you. Yes.
Try to at least introduce ourselves to her so she knows more about Great Valley. Exactly. So, all right. So the committees will stay as they are. Secretary's correspondence.
Not a real lot, just two things. Wanted to recognize that 50 years ago this month, it's in front of you. The banner's in front of you. The Great Valley School Board Interim Operating Committee was formed from the remnants of the Willistown School Board, the Charlestown School Board, the East Whiteland School Board, and the Malvern School Board. They started an interim operating committee that operated from December till July when the school district fully was functional. So just for your information, the minutes from the meeting of December 16th of 1968 are there. I will tell you that had the pleasure of serving with Don Meldrum. He was one of the board members. He served on the school board of Willistown from 1965 to 1969, and then was on the Great Valley School Board from 69 to about 75. Then fast forward to the late 80s, and there was actually a time when no one ran for school board in Region 3. So they talked him into rerunning again, and with 100 and some sticker votes at the general election, he got put back on and served another 10 years. So he was one of the greatest board members we ever had. I don't know if anybody here remembers him. No, Dolores remembers him, but he was a great guy.
And I did notice right outside the door here, there's a family tree of board members from
From
The beginning of
From
time.
beginning of 50 years ago till through today, so.
till time. And then you have the board minutes from July of 1969, that was our very first school board meeting, which Mr. Meldrum was also on that, and only served with, he was only one of the board members when I was on the board. The other ones, I did meet some of the others. Ed Hausner, who was a Charlestown, the first board president was from Charlestown. Actually, he was from East Whiteland, and he moved to Charlestown. So when he was president, he was East Whiteland, then he moved to Charlestown. But and a few of these guys, in the old days when we had authorities, we used to have school authorities too, because really the school authority, Chester County School Authority, is only formed to borrow money, because the IU cannot borrow money. And back in those days, you had authorities because school districts were not enabled to borrow money. So you had to form an authority to borrow money for you for the building projects. School board still did it. Technically the IU board is really the facilities. They do the projects and they approve them. The authority just approves the funding of the projects, because the IU still doesn't have authority to do borrowing. So And then the other thing for tonight is the annual food drive by our food service department. If you have any items, there's a list of the items. I'll thank the students in advance. They were always great. At least last year, they brought a lot of stuff. They actually helped pack the things. This room will turn into a little pantry, and the food service department for the past many years has been collecting items for our more needy students, so that over the holiday break they have essentially lunches and breakfast that they can make on their own. So it's that kind of stuff, and we get a lot of donations from the community and here, and the food pantry chips in, or the Chester County Food Bank chips in. So if you feel the desire to donate, there's a list of kind of sample things, but quite frankly, if you can just think of things that a kid could do on their own for lunch, that's what we generally are that's what they generally are looking for. And of course, it should be somewhat healthy. I'm always thinking M&Ms and peanut butter cups, but that doesn't sell well.
So Chuck, let's give them a little more info on this. So you'll be collecting from what date to what date?
Well, if you bring stuff in, we've been collecting, so we're collecting now until December 14th. It's on the website.
Okay, so collecting
Linda,
until
thank you,
December
Jen, and Linda,
14th,
And Kyle, thanks.
which is on the website. So we want refrigerated items?
Now, anything.
Anything non-refrigerated?
Non-refrigerated items, we generally get the refrigerated items. They will get things but they get delivered that week.
And the list is on the website, right?
List, everything's on the website there. Drop it off here or at any of your schools. If you want to drop it off at the school, say it's for this, and it'll get donated or shipped around. I know Ms. Field, they did a great job last year. I'm sure they're going to do a great job this year. We end up with a lot of stuff. It's quite an awesome site, and people really appreciate it. And so they start picking the packages up that week.
Okay, great opportunity to help
week
our
after.
own. So we'll get here before the 14th. Thank you.
All righty. IU report?
Yes. Okay, the meeting was held November the 14th at Penix Bridge campus in West Grove. Abigail Kaiser is a student at Oxford Area School District. She was introduced as the Skills USA Vice President this year. And then she explained that the Skills USA is a program that empowers its members to become world-class workers, leaders, and responsible adults. The focus is on skilled workforce training and development, which includes personal, workplace, and technical skills needed to succeed. Really is a good program. She was quite the impressive girl. Dr. Noreen O'Neill, who is the Director of Innovative Educational Services, introduced Mr. McWaters, a physics teacher with the Octorara Area School District, and he happens to be the coach of the 2018 American team for the International Young Physicist Tournament, and that's IYPT. That took place in July in Beijing, China. He, along with Dr. O'Neill and Mary Curley and Sandra McCabe, they chaperoned a team of 5 Chester County student representatives of the Coatesville area, Octorara area, and Phoenixville area school districts. The students work with their physics teachers, industry professionals, and sometimes younger students who assist in the experimentation process. The collaborative nature of the competition pushes students to think differently and develop a variety of crucial skills, such as determination, teamwork, and open-minded curiosity. They claim that the program has many benefits to the students as well as for the teachers' professional growth and satisfaction. They say that after many years of teaching, sometimes the days become mundane. Dr. McWaters states that his involvement with the IYPT program has enhanced his love of teaching physics. The kids we're really thrilled to be a part of this program. So we had 5 kids come from those 2 schools. Maybe this year, one of our children might like that.
And thank you, Mrs. Burrow, for sharing that. Our district, Great Valley School District, has been a part of that sponsorship to IYPT, as well as Mr. Watson, who is our physics teacher in the high school. He has also been involved in those meetings. He was sitting in with the team last year in the gentleman from University of the Sciences actually sponsors that, and Mr. Watson, along with Dr. O'Toole and I believe a number of others, met them at the University of Sciences to talk about that partnership. So Great Valley will have a voice, and hopefully some of our students will someday participate as well.
I did think it was very interesting and neat to see and to hear the dialogue. So as far as new business, we acted on the following. The 2019-20 IU calendars went for first reading, and we will approve them at the January meeting. The board approved the agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for the administration of a state on-the-road driver's license testing center at the CCIU Educational Service Building and the TCHS Penix Bridge campus. The board established that the election of the board of directors must be done between February 1st and April 30th. Thank you, we did that tonight. And the board established that the district and a proportionate balloting process for approval of the budget be conducted by mail ballots in March and April. Personnel, the board approved all recommended personnel actions, including routine terminations. The next CCIU Board of Directors meeting will be held on January the 16th at the Educational Center. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any legislative report? Oh,
How if I put the mic on? So right now, the State Assembly is in recess. They've been in recess since November 30th, and they will not resume until after the new year. They essentially went on recess right around the time of midterms. They had a few sessions, but nothing too earth-shattering. As you all know, the outcome of the midterm elections that we had back in November in Chester County is welcoming 9 new legislators. Pennsylvania, the General Assembly still has, the Republican Party still has majority status in the Assembly, but not supermajority status anymore as they previously had. All new 9 legislators in Chester County, or from Chester County, I should say, are from the Democrat Party, and all of whom unseated Republican incumbent or filled a seat vacated by a Republican. Prior to that, Chester County had almost exclusively been represented by Republican legislators. Our new House representative, U.S. House representative for our area is Chrissy Houlihan, and our new PA General Assembly representative is Christine Howard, replacing Dwayne Milne. There were a few pieces of legislation that the Assembly put forward prior to recessing for the midterm elections, and they are as follows. Just to give you a really quick synopsis, Act 158 of the Keystone exams provides alternate pathways for graduation for students who do not demonstrate proficiency on a Keystone exam during the years when a Keystone is a graduation requirement. This is a big one. Sunscreen use. Formerly House Bill 1228, it allows school entities to permit students who have to wear sun protective clothing for certain purposes to be able to use an aerosol sunscreen without a doctor's note. So that's interesting. Act 82 certificate grade spans requires special education certificates issued after December 2021 shall be pre-kindergarten through grade 12 or up to age 21. So they're not segmenting special ed as much. And they are hoping that people who have either a pre-K to 6th grade or 7th, 12th grade special ed certifications will be able to expand the scope of their certification through the coursework. Act 155 provides for training and qualifications of assessment appeal board members, prohibits personnel from revaluation companies or county assessment offices from making adjustments to market value or assessed value of properties during informal review. Requires the chief assessor to compile a list of the names and mailing addresses of all taxing districts in the county. So that is for assessment purposes. This regards executive session for school board. Act 156 amends the open meetings law to extend permission to extend to school districts the school code bill passed with the 2018-19 state budget, allows municipalities and other public entities to meet in executive session to discuss, plan, or review matters necessary for emergency preparedness, protection of public safety, and security. If disclosure of these records and plans would jeopardize or threaten public safety or preparedness. School bus cameras, vehicle code to allow for the installation or automated side stop signal alarm enforcement systems on school buses to capture information of vehicles that fail to stop or pass a school bus, which I just think is great that they're doing that. There is a legislation regarding workmen's compensation. I won't get into the granular level of that. Act 119, student services, requires school districts to offer to families the option of communicating that a parent or guardian is a member of one of the armed forces. And if a school district is notified that a child's parent or guardian has been activated or deployed, the district would be required to provide the student with access to school guidance counselors and existing federal or state military support services. So that's another safeguard for families who serve our country and the students who are in our schools. And then there is a piece of legislation looking at delayed start times for secondary school, and that's been quite bandied about all over, just not here in Pennsylvania. But it requires the Joint State Government Commission to conduct a comprehensive study of issues, benefits, and options related to instituting a later start time to the day at secondary schools. So the 2017-18 session is over. The 2019-2020 session begins in January, and when the newly elected members of the PA House are being sworn, they were sworn in on Saturday, and then the governor and lieutenant governor will be sworn in on January 15th, and then a new session will start. Thank you.
As far as the new legislators for Chester County, the IU has put together a meet and mingle, and the board will be receiving an official invitation. And the idea or the objective is for new and returning legislators to have the opportunity to meet with and introduce themselves to the Chester County superintendents and school board directors in an informal and relaxed setting. So that meet and mingle will be held Wednesday, December 19th at the Chester County Intermediate Unit on Boot Road from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. So more information will come. That just came today as a save the date with that information. So thank you, Mary, for sharing that.
Also, I just want to, I think maybe as a segue in from the legislation, the CCIU, as well as other school districts in the county, are starting to discuss and kick around this delayed start time. I think at some point, Great Valley needs to have a dialogue about this, especially since I'm getting emails from colleagues who also sit on that CCIU board that they are now starting to talk about it. Not advocating one way or another, just saying that we're one of 12, and if our peeps are talking about it, we need to get in on the dialogue. So how would you like to, what do you want to do with that, Regina?
Well, we did have the presentation, and I believe when Carol was on the CCIU board, and we did have the conversation related to that. As you had said, there are many variables that, as a countywide entity and as a state entity, and I believe that is why the legislation is getting involved, to look at how it impacts multiple other issues across the state. So we are certainly paying attention to that and watching on the research to how it truly impacts student learning.
And it's safe to say, I can, when it's discussed, say, we're wired in, but there's a lot of other things that have to unfold before we'll get involved in discussion of the minutia. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I think we got to keep in mind too that one of the districts that's pushing this moved their start time 15 or 20 minutes, and it's not much later than we already start. So although they're looking to move it further, but they only moved it a little bit. And like I said, they were starting at 7:30. I believe they moved it till 8 or 8:50, 7:50, right? And I don't know, what time do we start? 7:40 or 7:50? 7:40 already, so, yeah. So, I mean,
Oh, it's
Nobody's-
definitely some,
Yeah.
there's definitely some private agendas.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of data and evidence, and it's pretty sketchy. I mean, they've got a long way to go to get things that are valuable to take a look at.
When we
I've been to
discussed,
some forums, and there's some medical advice. I don't want to debate it here, but I wouldn't call it sketchy right now, but that's just.
I think one of the conversations that we had here dealt a lot with the release of students early from the school day. So if you start later and then students are released for sports, especially as spring sports release earlier, it's the loss of instructional time. So that was one of the conversations that this board had when Carol had presented the information from the IU. But we're definitely paying attention to that, and that's why I believe the legislation is involved. So it's not just pockets of certain school districts, but that we're making having a collective conversation.
Similar to.
Yes.
All right, any other reports? All right. What's going on in the high school?
Hello. It's kind of a lot of things going on at the high school all at once right now. Last week, the music program had their instrumental concert, so that was the bands and orchestras. And the choir concert, the winter concert, will be December 11th, so that's coming up also. This week, it specifically is pretty busy at the high school. There's the National Honor Society induction tomorrow night. And the Desmond Project students are having their annual senior citizen luncheon on Wednesday. Also, Mr. Lindemann already touched on this, but we are having the food drive. So we're collecting both money and food for that. Also, the high school has started to get in the holiday spirit with their door decorating contest. So all of the students will be working to decorate our homeroom doors, and then we'll have a competition at it right before winter break.
Thank you, and a lot of us look forward to the luncheon. Dessert. All right, superintendent report.
Thank you. We once again have some exciting, this is just a snippet of some of the things happening across the district. Our Charlestown students visited Shark Tank. So during the month of November, fifth graders at Charlestown celebrated their Age of Invention. The unit focused on a trip to the Shark Tank. Students presented their own inventions to members of the community to see if they could get someone to invest in their amazing creations. So it was a wonderful opportunity to not only invent, but to talk about it. The Franklin Institute Traveling Science Show wowed Katie Markley second graders with a fascinating presentation on how air pressure, condensation, evaporation, and barometric pressure affects our atmosphere. Fourth graders also participated in the fun as they increased their knowledge about magnetism, electricity, and circuits. The assembly is one of the school's favorites each year. Our chess champions, KDM students Harshith and Varshith Donspal, won the New Jersey K-12 grade chess championship on November 18th. There were 44 players who competed in the third grade elementary division. Congratulations. They finished the tournament, each winning 4 rounds out of 5. Both won second place tiebreakers as an individual and won a team trophy for the school. So congratulations, Harshith and Varshith each hope to become a chess grand master. Great accomplishment. Widener University High School Leadership Award, congratulations to high school senior Tim Dyer, for being selected as the recipient of the Widener University High School Leadership Award. The program recognized 93 students from high schools in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. These students demonstrate courage and leadership within their communities. The selected students will receive an opportunity to participate in a distinctive leadership experience at Widener University, attend a celebratory breakfast at the National Constitution Center, and they will be recognized for their community efforts. Most notably, winners will receive a $20,000 scholarship awarded over 4 years should they choose to enroll as an undergraduate at Widener University. So congratulations to Tim. The Citadel Heart of Learning Award program is now open. So please, each year, Citadel receives thousands of nominations from students, parents, and community members to honor local teachers with a nationally recognized Citadel Heart of Learning Award. Only 15 finalists from across the county are selected from this group, and 3 winners are selected, 1 from each level. So there's an elementary, a middle, and a high school level. Please consider nominations. The nominations are due December 31st, 2018, and they can be submitted online at citadelheartoflearning.com. We will also have a link to that on our webpage, and continual communication will be available. As our speaker series continues, our next event in November, in November, we hosted the 3rd event, and nearly 50 community members and staff came out to participate in the Chester County Crime Victims Unit about preventing child sexual abuse. The next event in our series will be held on January 30th at the Great Valley High School. This event is designed for parents of middle and high school students. More information and registration information can be found on the website. The idea of that event is a parent's guide to teenagers and substance abuse, warning signs, and communication skills. All of our events, and I really have to thank Ms. Blake and the team, the administrative team, for working so hard to really gather areas of interest for our parents and our community members, and then finding really expert talent to deliver those or facilitate those events. Moving on, again, if you have time and are looking for incredible opportunities to interact with us at the school, we have a lot to offer. So December 4th, as Millie had shared, the National Honor Society induction is tomorrow evening, as well as the Sugartown Spelling Bee. December 5th, the Desmond Senior Citizen Luncheon. So for any senior citizen who may not have been aware, please know that they're certainly able to attend, and they can contact the high school office for additional information if necessary. December 6th, 10th, and 11th are community forums around full-day kindergarten with the idea of providing information and answering questions. The 6th at General Wayne, the 10th at Sugartown, and the 11th at Charlestown. Last week, the first forum was held at Katie Markley. December 14th is the middle school winter dance, and that is for middle school students, so it's not open to community members. December 24th to January 1st is our winter recess. And I believe Mr. Linderman, our concerts. This is where all community members who would like to come out and see and hear our amazing students, please look at the concert schedule. And it really, I know for me, really makes the holiday season special. December 4th, fifth grade concert at Katie Markley. December 6th, General Wayne fifth grade concert, and there are 2 showings, one during the day and one in the evening. December 11th is the high school winter concert. December 12th, the district orchestra and band concert. That is held at General Wayne. Again, 2 showings, one in the morning and one in the evening. December 13th, middle school winter choral concert, and December 18th, the Charlestown fifth grade concert. So a lot of events to showcase our amazingly talented students. The next part of our superintendent's report, as a part of the communication plan that was shared by Ms. Blake in October, each board meeting, there will be attention and information aligned to the topic of full-day kindergarten and the exploration of the potential to implement full-day kindergarten in the 2019-2020 school year. And again, just to reinforce, the time from October to February has been spent to evaluate and explore the possibility, with no decision being made until February by the board. The reason the decision is being made in February, to give parents an opportunity to make an informed decision for those children who would be entering kindergarten in the fall of 2019. So Dr. O'Toole, Ms. Beck, and Mr. Hammond will be presenting the information on the research and program considerations.
Thank you. Good evening. As Dr. Speaker Polubinski shared, tonight I'm going to share an overview of the longitudinal research. It's not all of the research around full-day kindergarten. We have posted on our full-day kindergarten website resources for anyone in the community to look at not only the research that we have here, but additional resources on around full-day kindergarten. Mrs. Beck is then going to share information around program, the research around programs, that best practices within full-day kindergarten, and Mr. Hammond is going to then share how we see that influencing our decision-making if the board so chooses to vote in February to approve full-day kindergarten, so that you at least see that we've looked at not only the research, but also have plans that we'd be able to follow through with. So the first part, just as I shared, the longitudinal aspects within full-day and half-day kindergarten, the one thing I just want to point out, the caveat, is that the majority of the research, or all the research that we were able to compile and review within longitudinal research, when looking at students' performance over multiple years, the research primarily focuses on students that were in a half-day program and students were in a full-day program, and then how they proceeded through first, second, third, and sometimes even into seventh grade. And so it wasn't looking at strictly just all students in full-day kindergarten then moving through the grade levels. So there is, as you will see, we provided much more information. I'm not going to read each bullet within the slide, but you're welcome to read the information. We looked at studies that had large sample sizes, as well as I'm going to talk about a meta-analysis that was done by Harris Cooper and colleagues at Duke University. But the first one we touched upon, primarily just looking at full day versus half day, a longitudinal based study. So each bullet at the top you'll see is the title of the research article. We do have the specific reference at the bottom of the pages for each of the areas where we do have the locators if anyone is interested in actually going and looking for the research article with the journal. But primarily in the one study that was done in Canada, they found no apparent benefits of full-day kindergarten for all students, but for specific subgroups. And they did, within the research study, highlight specific subgroups of students in third grade, male, female, or socioeconomic status, and kind of within the study did highlight specific grade levels by third, seventh, by math or reading. So it was not specifically for all, but within subgroups. In the second study, this one was more of a longitudinal study looking at over 1,300 students. Again, some students who had to be in full-day kindergarten for the whole year or half-day kindergarten for the whole year, and then looking at their growth. And they identified, and you'll see this later in another slide, a fade-out process, or a fade-out for students, where approximately 36 months after the spring of kindergarten assessment, they noticed that the any attributable gains that they identified for half versus full seem to not materialize past 36 months. In the next study, this is where, by Dominic Gullo, who is a researcher out of Drexel University. It is a little bit dated in the sense of 2000, so it is older in its sense, but it does have a higher sample size. It was taking place in a Midwestern school. The part of his research actually did find that the benefits were seen all the way up to second grade. So that was something that he was able to identify of students that had higher achievements in standardized assessments, but that they did not see special education referrals go down, but he did notice, or his research showed, that students who attended full day were retained less often. This chart I just put there as a reference for you to look at. This one is from the meta-analysis that was done by Cooper and colleagues. What we want to make sure that you understand from this chart, these were just all of the this was a study of 40 studies. So overarching study of studies, or a meta-analysis, and identified the positive effects that would be attributable to full day versus half day, and potential negative effects. And what we want to highlight here is that within this, not only are the potential positive effects identified, but if the board were to vote to move forward with full day kindergarten, we would make sure that we identify and look at any of those negative effects to make sure that we're mitigating, or at least addressing any of those potential negative effects as well, and make sure we minimize any that we potentially could see here in Great Valley. Same study from Cooper et al. And colleagues, or et al., in the sense that they found that students were able to see potential gains, but the association or the actual gains disappeared by third grade. So they did see immediate effects of full day kindergarten, but over time it did diminish, similar to the previous study that I shared, the fade out approach. And within this study, they do get into some possible rationale for the fade out. You see there the three possible explanations. But ultimately, if you see at the last slide, what they have sort of commented on is that full day kindergarten should be viewed as one of many different variables that would impact students, and that those who are impacted by the overarching intervention is just one aspect. So taking from that, looking at the actual overarching longitudinal research, we wanted to begin a deeper dive into the programmatic research, as well as to what should a full day kindergarten look like, and the research surrounding not only curricular implementations, but programming considerations.
So before we move on to the
Sure.
program, can we ask some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at least I have a question.
Okay.
So all I've heard you say over the last, all these 3 or 4 studies is, and I'm going to paraphrase, by third grade, it's negligible. So why would we do this?
Right, so as I shared earlier too, with all of these studies, they were looking at students who were in full day and looking at students who then were in half day. And then those same students then proceeded into the next grade level. So they were looking at students who were in a full day kindergarten and a half day kindergarten, and those, whether it be by choice or it would be optional. So our recommendation would be that if we were to move to a full day program, it would not be optional for students and have a half day concurrent with a full day.
Okay.
Because as students then progress in the years, some students would have had the benefit over other students, and they would
So-
have received the same curricular.
So maybe I'm just missing something. If you've got a group of kids that are in half day and they progress to third grade, and you study them, and you got a group of students that are in full day and they progress to third grade, and you've studied them, and at the end, those two groups are at the same level in third grade, why would we invest in full day kindergarten if half day achieves the same thing? Am I missing something?
No,
I mean,
well,
maybe I am. I'm
The
just trying
one
to-
slight variable is they would be going into the same first grade. So as Dr. O'Toole had shared, if we would have a universal full-day kindergarten, we would then, if we do that in 1920, we would spend 1920 to look at the expectations for the incoming first graders that have experienced full-day kindergarten, because then the whole collective would move from full-day kindergarten to full-day first grade. So if you don't change the expectations because you have variance of the students going from one grade to another, which is what was in the study. So you could have some students going half day, some students going full day. You can't change the expectations of first grade because you don't have universal foundation. Those were students in the same system.
Gotcha. All right, that makes sense. So you're saying that by having the full day, what it'll do is it'll raise the starting point. And when you change this in first grade, because everybody will be at this level versus some are here and some are there, and therefore you have to come down to make sure everybody starts at the same place.
It will ensure a
therefore-
foundational consistency.
Right.
So are there studies, though? I mean, you showed studies, it sounds like the studies that you showed had these mixed groups together going into first, second, third grade. Are there studies out there where they take a cohort of kids from preschool age and a part of them go to full-day kindergarten and go up through a program where everybody's in full-day kindergarten and other cohorts that go for half-day? I mean, are there studies comparing sort of full cohorts of full-day versus half-day and seeing the difference?
We haven't found specific groups in the sense of the studies that we have found either are comparing full day versus half day within the same system.
Okay.
And so we haven't,
There aren't.
they're just.
Okay, I'm
they're-
surprised. I would've
think much of the research has further research that they're recommending. And much of it is to deal with the impact, or what they see with the fade out effect. And so typically the conclusion is that more research need to be done. And I think it's hard to identify specific groups, if you're comparing different school districts, there are
Right,
so many different variables that could impact. So that's why they were looking at the longitudinal studies as well as looking at larger cohorts. But when you look at a cohort of 13,000 students across different school districts, it's difficult. And that's why even the meta-analysis is trying to look at variables and trying to at least the best as possible to have apples to apple comparisons, but that's a challenge as well.
All right, thanks for explaining that.
Sure. Any other questions around the longitudinal research? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Beck, who's going to highlight the research specific to programming for a full-day kindergarten.
So as we looked at the research, as Dr. O'Toole said, we looked at best practices specific to full-day kindergarten programs. And what was pervasive throughout the research was a strong recommendation to integrate developmental play and provide opportunities for learning through play in kindergarten. When the research refers to play, they're not referring to unstructured recess time where the teacher is monitoring or sitting back and observing. The way that the research describes that play is a balance of child-initiated play in the presence of engaged teachers, along with more focused experiential learning activities designed by the teacher. So really guided play where the teacher's being strategic about those opportunities and making sure that there's going to be inquiry learning that teacher supports. I'm not moving slides. Okay. The research on this slide that was conducted by Pyle and colleagues found that teacher beliefs regarding the role of play on child's academic development impacted the type of play they implemented in their classrooms. So in classrooms where they found kindergarten teachers who did not believe that play influenced their academic achievement, they found that that's where teachers were implementing more of that in unstructured free play, where the teacher was kind of sitting back and just watching and monitoring. But in the classrooms where the teachers believed that there was a strong need to connect the play to the learning, they saw teachers actively involved and strategically designing opportunities that promoted learning through play. So if the decision were made to move forward with full-day kindergarten, this study would inform the training and support we would need to provide to our kindergarten teachers around what our program would look like in terms of developmental play, how we ensure students are learning through play and through those inquiry-guided experiences.
Tricia, can I ask you, I'm sorry,
Yeah, absolutely.
by play, do you mean interaction?
They're scenarios or real life opportunities. So for instance, if you think about a kindergarten classroom, you might think about a school store, or a classroom store where students are engaged in running a store. They might make little signs, so they're working on their beginning sounds. They're using that letter sound association to say these are the bananas, these are the apples, and writing little cards, and then designing prices. So they're working on their letter sound piece. They're then working where the teacher maybe gives the students clipboards, right, where they're writing their shopping list. And she's coaching and supporting in the conversation to say, as you write down your shopping list, let's cue to that first letter. Let's take a look at that. How much does that cost? Do you recognize that number? Maybe that's 5 cents. And looking at giving them some play money that they would then go to a cash register and work through to kind of design out. And she might coach in to say, count out your pennies, let's put them all together. So the teacher's actively involved. She's set up that environment to support students' learning.
I'm rolling it back. Please tell me if I get it, because I have some gaps here. So what you're saying then is, by having the longer day, they have an opportunity to utilize more time and to make the lessons more creative, so that in the end of the day, there's more opportunity, since not all children learn the same way. The more innovative and the more creative the teacher can be, the more people she's actually touching with the lesson. Is that what I'm hearing?
And Mr. Hammond will touch on this too, but obviously that gift of time, that length of the school day, will allow for more opportunities. It will allow us to extend some of our blocks of instructional time. So students would have more potentially sustained time to be reading or writing, but it would also allow time students need to move, they need to, interact and speak, engage in those social skills, those types of things. So this incorporates all of those literacy pieces that they may be learning maybe in a more traditional portion of the day into kind of a more meaningful context. So let's see how it really works. They're moving, they're engaging with peers, the teacher's coaching in, also working on just social skills. How do you say I'd like that rather than saying give me that? Those types of things. So there's a lot of coaching, and a longer day would potentially provide us with some opportunities for more application of more of the traditional learning in a play context. We also wanted to highlight 3 additional publications or reports or studies. And all of these, again, supported that need for that balance of that child-initiated play where the teacher's coaching in, as well as the teacher really guiding more inquiry activities, experiential learning activities for the students. Dr. Gullo, who Dr. O'Toole mentioned, who's an early childhood researcher and professor at Drexel, also emphasized in his work and pointed out that play ensures students are actively engaged in that discovery, and that as well as engaged in activities to understand how things work and apply their learning in meaningful contexts. And then all of the bodies of research around play in full-day kindergarten programs also emphasize that developmental play is critical to promoting language, cognition, social competence, and self-regulation in kindergarten-age children. And then based on this research, Mr. Hammond's going to discuss how this information will guide our program considerations if the decision were made to move forward with full-day kindergarten.
Good evening, everyone. And again, a lot of this information was already covered, but what would this look like when we took the theory or a lot of what we heard about tonight in the research and turned it into, okay, what happens practically in the classroom? Because we all want to know, what does this actually look like? So from a 10,000-foot level, one of the first things that we would do is we would obviously review what we currently do, and not to circumnavigate or to circumvent what we already do as far as our curriculum framework, but really integrate play within that framework to create deeper experiences, deeper meanings for children through their ability to problem solve, to socialize, cooperate with one another, and all of those skills that the research says that the kids would benefit from. So again, looking at literacy, for example, writing opportunities, print-rich environments, creating those shopping lists, looking at beginning consonant sounds, storytelling, supporting their book selection through these socialization components. Those are just examples at a 10,000-foot level of what this could look like in the classroom. Integration of mathematics, we already talked about the school store. We're looking at things like, for example, cooking. You know, we all remember the kitchen in the middle of the kindergarten classroom, and learning those concepts through more natural play-based experiences. Measuring, building, things of that nature. When we're looking at science and social studies, we're looking at inquiry-based approaches, we're looking at the natural world. Example, students can learn about weights and measures, engineering and STEAM concepts, building towers, growing their own microgreens and giving it to their favorite principal to eat, things of that nature. So just really looking to provide a more enriching experience is what the research says through integrating play within a natural curriculum, just to give that authenticity that the research says that we can get from those experiences. So Kyle. Yes.
I have a question for you. In your capacity, what do we gain?
What do we gain?
Yep.
Wow, that's a great question. I think, you know, humans are social creatures, and I think the ability to integrate more of those social interactions, you know, there's research that also says that linguistically, much of what we learn is through those cultural and social conversations. So the ability to do that more often can only benefit students, not only in just, we think of socialization as talking to one another, but it's really problem solving, it's really negotiating, working through conflict, all of those things at a ground floor level, skills that we need not only in the classroom, but just in life in general. So.
Thank you. That was a phenomenal answer. You're talking to one who really believes that we need more kindness in the world. And that was a great answer. I appreciate it. And I'm not going to apologize for putting you on the spot. I did it on purpose. But thank you very much for your
You got me out of class early tonight. I'm good with being put on the spot.
And I won't necessarily direct this to Kyle, but for any of you, to piggyback on Mrs. Burles, what would we lose?
What could we do? Let me think about that.
Maybe I'll jump in. I don't see it as a gain loss. I think obviously, as Mr. Hammond shared, there's a gain for the opportunity. If we don't move forward with full day kindergarten, we still have a great kindergarten program, and we still are providing our students with a phenomenal learning experience. As I think it was shared, Mrs. Beck shared about the gift of time, you know, be able to look at that structure of time. And we know there are some students that will absolutely be able to take advantage of that time, and we would be able to provide supports and services to students in the full day. But I don't think that if we don't have a full day, that our students will be disserviced by that.
Thank you.
Another great answer.
Thank you.
Ron, while you're ahead.
Well, I just want to close out by saying that tonight was purposefully set to, as Mr. Hammond said, the 10,000 foot, maybe even the 50,000 foot level, look at the research, the body of research that exists, as well as if you're interested in learning and us diving deeper even more, we can. But then moving forward to have conversations as to, in January, presentations around specifics, what do we envision, what could the schedule look like, and some of those questions that parents are asking. We'll have more information from not only the survey to inform us as to what to share with you, but things that we're looking at and planning on putting together for you so that as you're looking at making the decision, we have as much information to share with you as possible.
I've thought of a few questions.
Go ahead.
So when we compare full day kindergarten to what we're doing right now at Great Beginnings, how much of Great Beginnings is play-based learning, and how do you see them comparing with each other?
I know that they have, I know you've worked with the full day kindergarten teachers as well.
Yeah, they have integrated play-based learning within their classrooms, so they do, provide opportunities for students to apply their learning. We have provided them with more opportunities, more resources, more, a kitchen maybe, whereas in our half-day program, we made, the teachers have kind of said historically, that could be something that they have more opportunities to use in full day, so we don't have them currently in our half-day program. So they've really worked their schedule to allow for children to move. They have a recess in the morning, a recess in the afternoon, a lunch recess, and then they've really tried to incorporate, they may do their readers workshop and then move into either a choice play where students have 3 or 4 areas that they could play in. So they're exploring a science concept more in detail. They do an animals unit, so maybe they're doing some observation, or they're doing some drawings and some labelings, those types of things. They may be then working on their math skills in some type of store environment, or writing up price tags for things, or those types of things. So they have integrated that, and we'll use those teachers as a resource if we were to move forward to talk us through. We spent a lot of time and energy when we developed that program in looking at the curriculum and making sure it was aligned to best practices at that point in time. So we'll review the current literature, use those teachers as a resource to help us kind of design, and if we were to move forward.
One of the comments that was made as we've been working with our current kindergarten teachers and through the forums was our full-day teachers said they do have the gift of time. And one of the benefits has been we started mindfulness and really working with students to K through 12 to talk about mindfulness and taking brain breaks and really finding opportunities to reflect and breathe. And our full-day kindergarten teachers, many of them implement those kinds of strategies because they have the time to do that in morning meeting and having children take the time to breathe and reflect and think, which oftentimes, as all of us, the less time you have, those are typically the things that go first.
Do we find any anecdotal evidence comparing our great beginnings with our current half-day, with readiness into first grade? I know they're really different sectors of kids to compare against, but
one of the variables, just as the longitudinal studies showed, all of our students, our goal is to prepare our kindergarten students to be prepared to be successful in our current first grade program. So because in order to qualify for Great Beginnings, there's a qualification based on a need. So the idea is to level the playing field to balance that identified area of need so that all students would enter at the same level in first grade. So it's been successful in doing that for parents who agreed to participate.
And would the Great Beginnings program remain or go away?
No, all students in kindergarten at Great Valley, if the board so chooses to go with a full-day kindergarten programming option, all students would experience a full-day kindergarten option together.
And do we at all risk children that may need a little bit more or individualized attention in order to be prepared to sort of run with the pack in first grade? Are they at risk for being sort of left behind?
No, because the expectations would be the same for students to be prepared for first grade. So if additional supports are needed, those supports would be provided as needed. That actually question was brought up by a parent in the forum, and it was asked of the Westchester teacher. They've implemented for 1.5 years, so they were part of the panel at the forum last week. And the response or the perspective that she had shared after being 1.5 years into that program, they had, similar to our Great Beginnings, they called it FDK for full day kindergarten, and it was a needs-based program. And what she had shared, the teacher from Westchester, was that those students who had been identified, may have been identified years past as needing additional support, actually had the models of the other children, and they really felt part of the entire kindergarten class, rather than feeling as though they were starting at a deficit. So they found it to be a benefit to those students, and that the additional numbers, now their class size guidelines are higher than ours to begin with, so their class sizes are larger than ours for their kindergarten classes. But they went from a smaller class to, I believe she had said 24 or 25. And she said that that did not create a deficit model for those students.
But I would imagine you're also going to see some identification of children that need some extra help that didn't qualify for Great Beginnings, right? that even in half-day program, it's hard to identify in only half a day. And now we'll have the ability to provide them services and get them.
And that happens every year, independent of whether the board chooses to implement a full-day kindergarten next year. The kindergarten screening is typically done on the spring prior to kindergarten. And as we know, a lot of development happens early in a child's life, in a person's life. So what presents as either a strength or an area of need in the spring may be exacerbated or go away by the time that child enters our schools at the end of August or the beginning of September. So yes, that happens. The gift of time will give the opportunity, and things that we might not think about as areas of practice, like experience with cutting, using scissors to cut, develop fine motor skills, the opportunity to interact with other children in a play-based model where you're doing fine motor activities that don't seem like learning, but truly build those skills that, if not coordinated and if not time, children will delay those opportunities or having those opportunities. So definitely.
Thank you.
Regina, when will this team come back to us?
Every board meeting from now until February, there will be a presentation specifically aligned to an area that is being researched or studied. As I mentioned, the last forum is going to be held on December 11th at Charlestown. Following that forum, a survey will be sent out based upon a lot of the questions that we've received up to this point, a lot of the feedback from area school districts, as well as our own teachers and staff, and some of the parents that have shared information. The survey will be open from December 11th through December 22nd, and those results will then be presented to the board in January. And it's very strategically put together to make sure the board's direction was that the survey would be informed. So all of this time is to allow community members and current parents and staff members to become informed about the finances, about the program, about the research, about the guidelines. So that will continue. In January, the survey results will be available, and I really want to thank the current kindergarten teachers, the staff at our elementary schools, our elementary principals, our administrative staff, Jen, Dr. O'Toole, Ms. Beck, because they have really been working together to have those conversations, to really ask ourselves the questions, what answers do we need to get more information in order to answer fully? What questions? So that they can be included in the survey. And Ms. Blake has really been working to have that survey be comprehensive. So for our community members, even if they do not have children in the school, flyers will be hung in doctor's offices, libraries, places where community members will go, and they will have an opportunity to use a QR code to scan the survey into their phone and take the survey, or go to our website and take the survey, because we really want to have a breadth of information to bring back to the board so the board can make an informed decision in February. That is the goal. So that is our timeline.
Question to my board colleagues, are there any particular questions we want to make sure we see on that survey to help drive a decision? I would hate to see such rich feedback come back and it not answer a particular angle on a question that we would like. As I think this through, I think one example is I'm not even quite clear in talking with friends, neighbors. Is this, are we proposing full-day kindergarten to solve a problem? Are we proposing full-day kindergarten as an enrichment opportunity? Are we proposing full-day kindergarten as a perk for parents not to have to pay for daycare? What is the reason that we're doing this? And how do folks feel about that reason? I think maybe we could talk about how we might get at that.
And that's a great, actually, that's a great question. I have to say that I often say the way my mind works is I connect the dots and they've got to make a circle, and if they don't, I'm not in a good way. There's dots not connected for me, that several that you just kind of touched on. I think that it is valuable to have some kind of dialogue, especially there.
Maybe it would be helpful for us to see the survey before it goes out, to see if it sparks anything in a way that makes us say, ooh, this is a great, but what about the, you know what I mean? I think it's hard in a universe of nothing, like, we have no idea what you're planning to ask, to say, dump this into this universe and try to figure out what it is that we think that we might want to see, that it might be good to have a starting place.
And the whole goal of the survey was to take the information that we're hearing through the forums, through the questionnaires, through this board dialogue, and create the survey based on that information. If you remember when we spoke in November, the two big questions were why and why now. The why is to create a consistent foundation that all of our students will experience by the time they get to third grade. There is a very significant change that happens from second to third grade, and not only in Great Valley, but educationally overall, and that is the shift from learning to read to reading to learn. And if that shift doesn't happen in our students, we have the larger the number of students who are continuing to learn to read by third grade, the more resources are necessary for those children. And they become at a significant, they begin to significantly struggle because the expectation academically is that they are reading to learn and apply knowledge and information and gather skills. If they haven't gotten those skills and they're learning to read at the time they're reading to learn, they're significantly pulled to get. So the why is, right now we have a lot of disparity. We have some students right now in our district who have a very rich offset half day. So they're coming to us for a half day of kindergarten, and the other half day may be very enriched. We have some students in our district who are in full day programs, but it's not aligned to the trajectory for Great Valley. So they may enter first grade having experienced a full day kindergarten program, but not aligned to our expectations for first grade. We also have some students who are experiencing a half day academic program with us, and the offset of the half day is not as enriched. So we have a lot of disparity entering into our first grade. So we can't consistently change the expectations for first grade because of the disparity that exists at the foundational level. So the why is consistent foundation for the majority of our students, and then the trajectory of what we expect in first grade, the trajectory of what we expect in second grade with the learning to read focus, so that by the time we go from second grade to third grade, we have confidence in our programming that we're now transitioning to reading to learn. And that is the why. The why now, why don't we wait for this decision, is, as we've mentioned a number of times before, this board is going to have to make some serious decisions as our enrollment increases, our buildings become at capacity or over capacity, and then what is the decision moving forward? So we are requesting, the request for qualifications is going out to architects to look at our buildings, look at our facilities, and then have conversations with the board in the spring, really heavily next school year, about what would the grade configurations look like, what would we do as a district, is it another building, if we're building, where are we building, what grades would be in those buildings, and the why now. We cannot do deep dives on multiple decision points at the same time well. So the why is the foundation, and the why now is to really align our resources to maximize the benefit of a deep dive and attention to one issue at a time.
To go to Amy's earlier question about things we might want to see on the survey, I understand you're going to wait to get input from the parents, which will help you, and the community, which will help you develop questions, and maybe if there's questions with multiple options of answers, you'll have heard many comments, which will help you inform that. But I would hope that, for me at least, that somewhere on the survey there'd be a straightforward, do you support this or no? And if there's a why, or like if they say yes, why? If they say no, why? I assume there'll be some sort of drop down, but I'm going to make sure we have comments, because I don't really understand all the reasons that parents might support or not support. And I'd like to make sure we capture all of those, and I'm sure we can, even if it's open comments, we could develop themes out of that. I'm especially interested in the why not. We've heard a lot of why for, but I'm interested in why parents would, or community members would say they don't want to see this.
Absolutely, and the reason I was very hesitant on saying you can review the survey, we have a very tight window, and it is December. So to maximize our time, if you have any questions, there will definitely be opportunities for comments, and there will be those direct questions. But if you have specific questions or ideas, please email me, because we don't have another meeting until January, so please get that information. And Jen, as we're putting that together, we'll make sure that we are addressing the areas that folks are concerned about. I just want to make sure that we're being really as fair to folks that want to respond as we can, because the survey will be open from December 11th till December 22nd.
But I guess my question is, since we're already sitting where we are in December, you must have a sense of what it is that you're planning to put in. And I think that it would be helpful for us to have a starting point. So even if you emailed that out and just said, here are the, you know what I mean?
Just so you know, this was in the communication, or the version of it was out in the communications plan you saw last month. And it's already at the translator being translated, the survey. So we'll gladly send you what the final version of the survey is going to be before it goes out, but that bus has left.
And also too, my colleagues, if I could just take a minute, not a good idea to micromanage. We've tried to do this in the past, and it's come back to us, and we've gone round and round. Not a good idea. I trust that we have the right professionals, but if there's something that is on your mind specifically, go to Regina. But I'm all for us not getting this survey.
I totally
in
agree.
advance.
I think my fear for this group is that we get a lot of rich feedback that says, I'm just hypothetically, everybody says, we love this idea. And it's mostly responses from incoming kindergarten parents that say, I can't wait to not have to pay for daycare. Well, that doesn't equip me with information I need to make a balanced decision about whether or not this is the right investment. Do you know what I'm saying? So I need to get at that.
But what it does equip you with is what the community sentiment is, and that's what the purpose of the survey is, to give us the community sentiment on each individual question. So even though it doesn't answer our questions for us at the end of the day, it definitely provides us with the purpose of the survey. They're giving us what the community feedback is. And you know, if we get 75% come back of 2,000 that answer, and 75% say, hey, we get to save on daycare, that's our community sentiment, and that's what we've got to live with.
Fair enough. I just want to make sure all of us at this table are prepared to make a decision.
But in fairness, we need to make sure that we don't, but I'm assuming the admin is, and Jennifer, unfortunately, it's your headache, I'm sure, a lot of it, on these surveys, to make sure they're balanced, right? Because you can write a survey that says, do you think full-day kindergarten is a great thing? And most people would say no in a silo, but.
Or say yes in a silo.
I mean, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Yes in a silo, not understanding some of the causes and effects, right? So some of those causes and effects are, as we heard the other night, Mom, very upset, I'm gonna lose very important time with my child, and my child's not mature enough, et cetera, right? Or our decision of, I don't know what the latest number is, but $400,000, should we be spending that somewhere else? Now, it's $400,000 is today. A couple of years ago, it was $800,000, and it's changing for various different reasons, right? So in a year or two, it could be, we were stupid not to do this, right? So I think, that's the challenge of the survey, and we got to leave it up to them to make sure it's balanced, and then we get a holistic answer from the community, not just a silo.
And we will be able to identify in the survey the stakeholders that are answering, so you will be able to see which answers came from which group. And again, the more people who will take the survey, the richer the survey results will be. So anything you can do to really encourage folks to participate.
I know one of the things that that's come up from time to time is that people feel like this is a done decision one way or another, and we are truly exploring. So if people really want a voice in this, they really need to answer the survey. This decision has not been made. It is not a done deal that there will definitely be full-day kindergarten, and it is not a done deal that there will not definitely be full-day kindergarten. So I think that sometimes we don't act because we feel like a decision is pre-formulated. And I think that also getting the message out there that this decision is truly in flux and we don't know which way this is going to come down is an important message and important to say, because I think otherwise people who feel like we're definitely going to move in this way won't fill the survey out. And then perhaps we'll be slanted in a different way because we don't get answers from people because they feel like it's a done deal. And I just want to caution everyone that it's not a done deal, and that if you want a voice in this process, you have to answer the survey.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I talked to some people at the forum the other night, and that was their comment. Their friends didn't come because this is a done deal. And I said, it's not a done deal, and if you don't voice your opinion and show up and take the survey and send us emails, then we won't hear your side. And if half the people don't want it and they're quiet about it, well, guess what? The other half wins, and vice versa.
And I know I make jokes sometimes about not having much of a life outside of this, but in all sincerity, if this was a done deal, I certainly would not be investing this amount of time and this, the resources of the administrative team with the research and the forums and the questionnaires and the surveys.
And inviting other school district
Absolutely.
admin and teachers to participate.
But it truly is to do it well now and not do it every year.
So I'm fine with roll the survey out. I think that this board has been very specific over the last several years as to what we've like to see in surveys, and I think they've come a long way over the last, my tenure, 6 years. I am confident, Regina, that you hear us, and I am also confident that your staff hears you. So I'm fine with roll it out, Jen, do it, and bring us back what our community wants to tell us. But I like the idea of, are you for it? Yes, why? No, why? That we will get great feedback from.
Thank you.
Regina, I have one question. I love the idea that you're going to be able to separate out the stakeholders, so you'll know community versus parents versus whatever else. Just a question. Within parents, will we distinguish if they're parents of incoming kindergarten versus other parents? Okay, that'll be interesting. Thank you.
When Brian stacks the field is what I said with all his preschool friends. All right. I think we have direction and clarity.
Yes.
We're good, right?
Thank you.
All right. Dollars and cents.
Just a real quick tonight on the budget calendar and timelines. You saw we told you this back in September, October, the Act 1 index is 2.3% for this year. That's the constraints we'll be under. Just a little chart showing what our millage increase has been versus the Act 1 index versus the CPI. If you look at the averages at the very bottom, we're actually in very good shape average-wise. We've had, since Act 1 has been in existence over the course of these 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years, we've averaged a little less than 2% tax increase, a couple years 0. So we've managed to outpace or underpace the CPI, and that's a CPI for the Social Security increases for people on Social Security. The Act 1 increase is actually significantly higher. So this is the timeline. You will have to adopt a resolution before January 31st, 2019, indicating you'll stay within the index. We have all indications, unless a massive sinkhole swallows the entire high school between now and January, we will not be recommending maybe. Jim? What are you doing?
Really?
Well, I would just promote we build a swimming pool then. So if we're going to do the index, then you have the other timeline. So if we stay within the index, which we will propose in January, the preliminary budget is listed there. If we want to do the exceptions, the preliminary budget is listed like that. So on the budget calendar, January 22nd, you'll have a resolution not to raise the taxes over Act 1. February 19th, if you do decide to raise the taxes over Act 1, we'd have to come back with a full-blown budget and all that. We could certainly do that. Either way, April 22nd, the preliminary budget will get done, and June 3rd, the final budget would get done. So that's it. So just giving you a little break on numbers, but be prepared, January the 14th will be no break on numbers. Regina alluded to the feasibility study update. There's kind of a timetable in there. We did send the qualification request to the architects the end of November. We're actually meeting, Jim and Ken out there are meeting with the architects. They're doing some preliminary walkthroughs and things like that this month, so they can get a better understanding of what they're in for. And then preliminary interviews with the qualified architects will be on January 7th. We're proposing sometime in February, we will have interviews of finalists with the entire board. And then you guys would appoint an architect, depending on what you like. Could be February, could be March. We're not tied to the number. So that's just an update on that process.
All right. All right. That concludes the presentation part of the meeting. We're now going to move to the voting section. So before we vote on anything, I will open up the microphone for any public comment on any agenda items on the up for voting on tonight. If you can come to the podium and state your name and residency, and please limit your time to 3 minutes. Also, there will be another public comment section at the end for any other comments. All right, seeing none, first thing up is the consent agenda items. Do I have a motion for items 801 through 802?
So moved. Move to approve 801 and 802.
Any questions? These are the minutes and the invoices. All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Next up is personnel approvals. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve 9.01.
Motion and a second. I just need to bring to the attention that there's a gentleman on here who thinks he's retiring on this motion. Mr. Linderman has submitted his resignation for retirement, and well, we might not pass this.
I know we'll have multiple opportunities to say this, but I have to say, Chuck, it has been my immense pleasure to have worked with you, to work with you. And I have to say, I have never worked with such a talented, knowledgeable, and amazingly effective colleague. And I really want to thank you for that.
Sometimes.
That's a perception. But I really want to, and I know I'm starting to get choked up because I am really not looking forward to June 30th of 2019 because it has been, but who's counting? And there is an app for that. So thank you.
He wrote it. All right. We have a motion and a second to approve Chuck's and all the other personnel changes. All those in favor?
Did you ask for any
Motion passes 8-0. Yes.
I didn't hear.
Sorry?
Just checking on you.
All right. Next up is financial approvals, 1001 through 1010. Any reason to take these separately, Mr. Linderman? All right. Do I have a motion to approve 1001 through 1010?
Move to approve 1001.10.10.
Motion is second. All right, any questions on any of these? Because I know we didn't review any of these in a work session, so maybe you could do.
Most of them are contract extensions.
Yeah.
Contract with Keystone Collections Group, they do our real estate taxes. True Time Software, that's a proposal for software that goes with our Skyward student and financial information system, kind of tracks people coming and going. So now that I'm leaving, you don't have to worry about me tracking and coming and going. So I'm the only one, I track everybody. There's the student activity clubs, that's self-explanatory. Tennis courts, we had discussed this before. It's the option. We want to get this rolling. It's resurfacing the 9 of the 11 tennis courts. The 2 upper courts will be kind of done the best we can to make some useful activity area, but they're too pricey to refinish into tennis courts.
Real quick, this is, we had talked a while ago that one proposal was to rip up all the tennis courts and redo them all for something like $1 million. And this is a, I forget the number, $55,000 option to resurface 9 of them. Okay.
And 2 will go out of service as
Right.
tennis courts, but they will not be removed as impermeable space at this time. So they will remain impermeable space. The actual exact use of the space is still a little bit under consideration at the school, but they will not be tennis courts.
But is the taking them out of the use, removing the pieces that make them tennis courts, is that part of this bid? So that work gets,
Well, that part we're doing ourselves.
we're doing, okay. But it will happen at the same time, that's all part of the same
Yeah,
project?
it'll
It's
all
not
happen,
separate later?
it'll all happen as soon as we possibly can, as soon as tennis season is done this spring.
Yes, thank you.
Which is why we want to get it started now. STS is our substitute teacher contract. We're at the end of 3 years with them. We're proposing the extension. Now, just so you know, if anything happens, you can jump out of that at any time. Although it would be a nightmare.
I just want to ask, why are we, the extension, I haven't looked at it since yesterday, I think the extension starts sometime in a year and goes for something like 3 years, so why are we doing it now? Just curious as to, is this the time you have to do it this many months in advance?
Well, anytime over the next couple of months we would do it. Quite frankly, I'm doing it. I'm trying to get all the contracts that I'm dealing with up to date for you before I leave.
Okay, thank you.
So,
And I do have to say, in this area, they have really been very reasonable and conservative as far as our pricing. And as long as we can hold on to that, I'd prefer to do that.
there's 3 special ed settlements there with agreements with, then there's also a donation for the middle school break room, which I heard was awesome. I didn't see my email today, but I heard it was awesome. We'll probably have a picture of it maybe next month in the superintendent's report or something.
Absolutely, and an amazing kudos to the middle school PTO. We will include those next month in our superintendent's report, but it really was so well received when the middle school teachers came back to school this morning to find that their middle school faculty room had been beautifully uplifted with not only fresh paint, but also really well done and a nice meeting space. So middle school PTO, thank you.
And then a professional development training agreement. And this is for the high school preschool, is that? Yes. Yes, high school preschool has nothing to do with the full day or kindergarten we're talking about, so.
Existing program.
It's an existing program.
All right. Any other questions on these? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Program approval, so the first one is the approval of all the board meetings and work sessions and committee meetings for 2019. And then the second one would be the approval of the school calendar for next year, 2019 and 20, and it would make it up to the website this week so that all parents can see it and hopefully make their plans for next year.
I have to change, I know the board is aware of my family personal health issue. There's one facilities meeting we're gonna have to move in January, and I will get together with Chuck before this gets published. Hopefully tonight, the 3 of us can talk real quick and just pick another day. It's a little bit later in the month of January, but the rest of the facilities calendar is fine.
All right. So I have a motion for approval of the
Move to approve 11.01
And 2.
and 11.02.
Motion second. Any questions on any of these?
Yeah, just for clarification, so we are going, depending on what the vote is on 11.02, if we vote to approve that, it then gets posted for the public this week to see, and then when we come back in January, we officially, or this is official. So tonight, this is official. Okay.
I would like to just share the process that had us arrive at the approval of the 2019-2020 calendar this evening. That was not the plan. As we had shared the communication plan for the school calendar, we had a school calendar committee, an ad hoc committee that was brought together for the purposes of looking at our community perspective and multiple, I believe we had 1,815 survey responses. Approximately, it might have been 1,817 responses, but it was well over 1,800 responses on the calendar survey. That information was reviewed with the calendar committee. We discussed not only the survey results, but the multiple pages, multiple pages of comments from that calendar survey. Based upon that information, and I was very appreciative, some of the comments of the survey were, thank you for asking, we realize that it most likely will be all over the place. So we tried to identify the themes within the calendar survey, and the plan was to prepare and share a draft calendar this evening with the board. Upon the sharing of the draft calendar, one of the comments that was made in the survey, and actually some of the board members, I thank you for acknowledging, the sooner folks find out the calendar, the sooner they can make plans, personal plans. So that is, I believe it was probably 7:15 this evening that it was proposed that we put the calendar on the agenda to be voted on tonight. So I thank you for that, but we will have the calendar that was the draft that you will be approving, that was reviewed tonight, that will be uploaded for the public as soon as possible.
Regina, besides uploading for the public, I think it's a great benefit to many people to have it this early. They may not be used to looking for it this early because it usually doesn't come until the new year. Is there any way of communicating, besides people watching this on, recorded or on TV live, to tell them that it's available?
Yes, we do send the e-newsletter that includes board updates, and this will be a highlight of that e-newsletter as well as the link to the calendar, so folks will be able to see that. I want to be true to my word. I did share with the calendar committee that I would share with them the draft calendar prior to the board vote. I have an inability to do that due to the time. So I will share the draft calendar with the calendar committee as soon as I have it in an electronic form, which I do not as we speak. And then as the e-newsletter goes out to the public, we'll make sure that that blast is sent to all parents and community members, as well as any of the other folks who have signed up to receive those notifications.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Jen, thank you. This was a really nice dialogue that we were able to have as a group, and I just heard feedback from community members. Thank you for asking, so thank you. And Mr. Linderman also included some meeting notes from 1968 in board docs this evening, and on this night or so, in 1968, they were talking about calendars and snow days and when to make them up, so some things never change.
It becomes a lot. 50 years.
Yeah, I just want to thank Regina and all the administrative staff and Jen for putting together this draft calendar. And please send our apologies to the committee for not sharing with them first. But the one message we did here was, on all those comments, was the sooner we get this out, the better. And so that's why we decided earlier to move on this rather than waiting what would amount to another month and a half, because we would be toward the end of January till we had a voting meeting. So we just wanted parents to know what the plan is for next year and next summer now, so.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Next up is the policy. So we have adoption of the second readings, and we have a repeal of a second reading. And then there's an organizational chart. So do I have a motion for approval for 1001 through 1003, or excuse me, 1201 through 1203?
Move to approve 1201 through 12.03.
All right, any questions on these changes? All right, all those in favor? Motion passes 8-0. All right, that concludes the voting section of our meeting. I'll now open the podium back up for any public comment on any items. If you could please state your name and residency and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, just come to the podium.
My name's Bruce, the last name's Matson. I live on Cohasset Lane in Westchester, and I wasn't quite sure how formal this would be or who I should be even talking to, but I have a concern about my real estate tax. Not so much my tax, but the people you have a collective, Keystone Collections. Got our tax bill. I've been a resident for 15 years, and my wife wrote the check and sent it in way ahead of the due date. However, she made a mistake on the check. She wrote $3,028.08. The number part of the check was correct, $3,828.08, if you saw the difference there. I did check with a bank and they say, yeah, they really honor the written part more than the numerical part. I get it. My problem's this. It was sent to Keystone way ahead of the due date. We got notification from Keystone, not by phone or email or anything. We got a letter from them dated, postmarked November 1st, telling us the check was no good. It was written wrong. Well, right away, I have a copy of the check here. I also have a copy of their envelope that was postmarked November 1st, which means they obviously sat on the check knowing it was no good to them until November 1st, then mailed it to me so I'd pay a $400 penalty. I think it's wrong. I questioned them, and they said they'd talk to you guys, I don't know who, but her name was Stephanie. 2 days after I got the letter in the mail, I flew over to their office and I explained my case. I said, you folks could have warned me, told me something. I'd have paid it in full, the correct amount, obviously. They said, well, that's not our problem. You've got to talk to the school district. Well, I didn't know who to talk to. I said, well, is that something you can talk to your manager about? She said she would. Whether she did or not, I don't know. Her name was Stephanie. She did a week later, believe it or not, call me on my phone and tell me her manager spoke with the school board and they said, too bad. It's the way it is. Pay your $400. And I'm here to ask, is this really correct? Is it really right? It was an honest mistake on a check that I was corrected in a heartbeat. They held it knowing it was wrong until they knew damn right well I'd pay a $400 fine. And I've got everything here.
Real quick, they would not have contacted the school board?
I don't know who.
Yeah,
I'm just here because.
We can look into it and let you know.
I mean, there's got to be one somebody
Right.
that I can appeal to.
Okay.
Absolutely, I will make sure that we look into that, and we will contact you directly if that's okay.
And we'll get your information before you leave.
I've got everything right here for you folks.
Thank you.
No problem.
Everything.
Yeah.
If I could leave it with somebody, or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
bring it right up.
Do you want him to have it, to give it to you?
Yeah,
Thank you,
well,
Chuck.
first, we have no Stephanie in our office. It was probably Jess. And I'm sure she talked to me.
No,
but
I meant-
No, he called Stephanie from Keystone.
Oh, okay, so.
Wasn't me.
Okay, because I do get involved. If they talk to us, I generally get the entire story from people. And we do try to make any corrections if we can. As we've talked before, in many cases, there are many times when we just cannot make an exception. And so I'll look into this and see what it was, if you want to leave me your.
It's so straightforward. It's just.
I know, they're all straightforward, so
No,
I
I'll look into it.
I know, I'll look into it. I'm not gonna argue with that, I'm just, yeah. Well, I'll have the contact information.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson.
Yeah, thank you.
And I apologize that you had to wait the whole meeting to share that.
Well, I didn't know this was going to be so formal.
We just like,
It was nice to have people in the audience, so thank you.
all right.
That's my deal. That's their envelope with the postmark date. And here's a copy of the check with the mistake was made.
I have another board comment. Can I give it?
She does.
Yeah, any other comments?
Board comments or on this issue?
No, board comments, other
Yes.
issues.
I wanted to report that I was thrilled to attend the Atwater Diwali 2018.
Check into it and try and get back.
It was a lovely, lovely day. Met a lot of new friends. The school board members that attended were actually their honored guests, and that was a real honor for me. And it was extremely enjoyable. I've not spent any social time with Samantha since you came on the board, and that was nice to meet your husband and to spend some time with you. And it's always nice to share some air with Dave. But it was a lovely, lovely event. There were several hundred people there. The food was phenomenal. And to just be thought of and held in esteem, because this is a community, and I don't just mean Atwater, I mean our Great Valley community, that truly does appreciate what the children are getting as far as education. And that's one of the things about Great Valley that I really, really appreciate the most. We've got very strong community values, and it was very nice to be honored as a school board member for that. So the three of us did take that honor on behalf of all 9 of us, and I'm passing that on. So it was a lovely time. I think Sam wants to say something. Samantha wants to say something
No, she
too.
had another. Yep, unrelated.
And just a policy committee meeting, 7:30 tomorrow morning.
Bright and early.
Bright and early.
He wrote his check.
And my comment, a separate topic, but thank you for bringing that one up, it's very important. When we had the snow on November 15th, I think nobody expected snow that early in the season. There was early dismissal, that seems a long time ago now, but it was just about 2 weeks ago. And I know that there was a lot of concern in the community about how the decision was made, and I think maybe also a second piece addressed on the communication. We saw emails and things on social media about parents not knowing when the buses were coming and things like that. I would love to delve into that a little further. I don't know if this is the right time or at the next meeting, just to sort of explain the process, especially the communication piece is of most interest to me.
Absolutely. As with any weather-related issue, or any kind of environmental issue that would happen, whenever we get the prediction, a county-wide call is scheduled. If we know in advance, the call typically happens at 4:30 in the morning. If we don't know, or we suspect, then a call will happen anytime that it's identified to be well within the time frame to make decisions happen. In this case, the call countywide was held at 10 a.m. on November 15th. During that call, the forecast at the time of the call was part of the conversation. We have representatives from the emergency management system of Chester County, as well as all of the area superintendents, as well as the transportation representatives. And the conversation at that time was, the forecast that was being shared was that the worst of the weather would happen earlier in the day and turning to all rain with increased temperatures by the time students would be transported home. During the conversation, it was discussed that we didn't want to relive the experience from a year prior, the Friday, when the forecast was wrong and many folks had difficulty getting home and our buses had difficulty taking students home. So it was decided to dismiss early. The time for the decision to dismiss early was made after 10 a.m. and our number one priority is the safety of our students, not only them getting home, but that parents know that students are going to be dismissed. So we have to make sure that we have time to communicate that with parents, and that parents will also have an opportunity to make arrangements for their children to come home prior to the time that they're expecting them. So the decision was made to dismiss early. There is absolutely no thought at that point as to worrying about getting the day in or worrying about any financial implications of that. Truly, the motivation is to get students home as early as possible, as safely as possible, with a notification to parents. That said, I do believe if we had had different forecast information, we would have made a different decision. So in the review, anytime we have any kind of event, we come together as an administrative team and evaluate the decisions that were made based on the information that we had at the time. I do believe that that decision, unfortunately, hindsight is 2020, Monday morning quarterback, we probably would have canceled school had we known what the weather was going to be like, but that was not what the forecast was predicting. In the area of communication, one reality that we discussed in our review of the event was the communication, and how can we communicate with parents as far as where buses are, especially if they're going to be significantly delayed. So actually, the administrative team came up with an idea, which I believe is really a solid one, that when we dismiss school for inclement weather, similar to airports, there will be a flight board on our website that will identify in each school building all of the buses and the status of the buses. What we would typically expect is that the three messages are: students were picked up from school, buses are in transit, all children have been dismissed from buses. Those would be the three most typical status updates of our buses. In the event that happened on November 15th, there were long periods, and I'm talking hours of time, that children were on buses. If that event would recur, we would update more frequently to travel is very slow, roads are closed, but we can do that to specific buses on that site. So then parents would be able to monitor the status of their child's bus on the website. I do believe that approach will be very helpful. Again, I do understand as a parent myself, not knowing where your child is or knowing where they are and being very concerned that they're unsafe is horrific. And I'm very sorry that many parents were so concerned and very upset. I do believe if the forecast was different, the decision would have been different. That said, our change in moving forward will be that flight status that will be shared, and we will do that. Again, it's not going to be changed very frequently on typical early dismissals. It will be students were picked up, students are en route, and buses all students have been, are off buses at that point. The only time we would update frequently is if there is a real, an unusual and really out of the box or multiply delayed buses. When currently, if we have one bus or singular or a few buses, a school messenger is sent specifically just to those parents of those children on those buses. That did not happen on November 15th because, quite frankly, our resources were extremely thin to deal with multiple buses and then multiple buses changing. As certain buses got stuck, new buses came, so bus numbers were changing. It was truly, not to in any way minimize the seriousness, but it was the perfect storm of multiple variables that impacted and created a harrowing situation. That said, I do want to say a huge thank you to our bus drivers and our staff, administratively, support staff, who truly came together and made sure that all of our children, although they were late, they were safe, and all children were delivered home safely. And that truly, in speaking to other superintendents across the Commonwealth, that was not the case in all areas. So a huge shout out to our bus drivers and our staff for keeping our children's safety as a #1 priority. So thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, Regina, thank you, and I echo that. I think we probably all would. We're really happy that it all ended well, right? And I think the communication initiative for the future, at least in my mind, sounds like a really good one. If parents know they can look and see, that sounds like a really great way to do it. Do other districts do that? Do we know? Is that the sort of like flight status thing something that is done?
I do not believe this flight status is done. I do know that there is at least one district that provides at a cost locations of buses, and they are actually rethinking that decision. One thing we want to be really careful about is the safest place for a student to be in inclement weather is on a school bus, not especially for inexperienced drivers, not behind the wheel of a car. So one of the problems that a district is experiencing is when parents know where a bus is, them deploying someone to pick up their child from the bus. And that creates multiple layers of concern from the student safety perspective. So we believe that the flight status will at least allow parents to understand where the bus, what stage of transportation the bus is in, rather than specific location of the bus.
And will you put on it if the bus numbers change, like it'll say like original bus 16, now children now on bus 24, so that they know when bus 24 pulls up in the neighborhood that that is their kid on that
Absolutely,
bus?
and that, again, very rarely happens.
I totally get it. That's why I'm asking, like, so that, you know, hopefully it's years till we hit this again, or if the kids, if you end up keeping any, because I know there were a couple districts who kept kids at school rather than put them on the buses, so that they know that their kids, because there was some issue with some parents didn't know, they would have gone to school to pick their kid up had they known that their kid was still at school.
Absolutely.
And just one more thing, you know, that storm outperformed the forecast on the whole northeast corridor of the United States. It wasn't just here. Every forecast was wrong. The storm outperformed. And every local school district had the same problems that we did. I'm just grateful that when things like this do happen, that you take the initiative to take a look at it, debrief, make changes, make improvements when necessary, and own what we had to own. So I appreciate that, Regina. Thank you.
I have two quick comments. One is, thank you for the update, and thank you for the bus drivers. For children with medical conditions, for example, if a child had diabetes or something, is there a plan in place that will make sure that they're safe on the bus if they are, you know, expected to take medicine at a regular time? And then my mind is blanking on the other thing my other question is really easy, is if we're ever in this situation again, are people supposed to call the school or the bus company?
The best, and that is exactly why we're providing as much information as possible to a place where parents can go, as you can imagine. And the best place to go, the best place to question is the school, because that is typically the most familiar to the parent. That's the parent is most in contact with the school. That said, district office is always, again, a point that parents can call and did on that day. Calling the bus company, again, we have our relationship with the bus company. The problem with calling the bus company, as you can imagine, in a case like that, their resources are just as thin, and they will be able to tell, because we all have the computer system that can tell which students are on which buses, but I would prefer the conversations go to the district, the reach out goes to the district, because Mike Detweiler does a great job with keeping in close contact, and it would eliminate a potential for the communication to get lost. So thank you, staff, for sharing that. And as far as medical issues are concerned, of course, they are planned for as much as possible. In the case with this last storm, it was not a medical issue, but just as urgent if you've ever been in the situation where you really have to use a restroom. And that's one of the realities that one bus experienced, because it was such an extended period of time that children were without food, without water, and without a restroom. So the bus actually readjusted the route to use a restroom that we could make sure that, number one, children were safe and supervised, but also able to do what they needed to do. And all those considerations will happen as best as can be planned for.
All right, any other comments? All right, motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and have a good holiday.
Thank you.